Hello, everyone. This is week 2 in our month-long theme of compassion. Our opening words are by Philip Larson. We gather together to face ourselves honestly, to forgive ourselves gently, to love one another fervently. I am now going to light the chalice in front of me. If you have a chalice or candle at home you would like to light, feel free to do so as well. As we light the chalice, may our souls become its hearth. We join our hearts in one flame of bright compassion and fervent justice. May our sparks create beloved community in the world. Our first reading is Justice, Equity, and Compassion by Reverend Richard Gilbert. As Unitarian Universalists, with a proud history of repairing the world, we cannot be content to be mere occupants of time and space. We want our time on earth to mean something. We want the space in which we live and move and have our being to be in good repair. We are ill content to wear religion only in our heads and hearts. We want it to be expressed with our hands. Compassionate service to others and social justice work is not simply another option on the spiritual menu, an add-on extracurricular activity, but part and parcel of what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. Justice, equity, and compassion are lived values of a free faith, suggesting that the spiritual life must express itself ethically. Our sermon this week is called Compassion by Reverend Charles Steffens. Looking around the world, it is hard not to see religion as a chief cause of world violence. The Sunni and Shiite Muslims are battling one another. The Roman Catholics and Protestants fought and killed one another in Northern Ireland. Conservative Christians and religious liberals fear and mistrust each other. Fear and hate exist between many Muslims, Christians, and Jews. We sit in front of our TV stations, listening to the violence along the Gaza Strip, and hear of innocent children being killed and mutilated by bombs. In India and Pakistan, fear and hate exist between Hindu and Muslim. In Myanmar or Burma, there is violence between Buddhist and Muslim. The list goes on, and yet the major religions all talk about compassion. Karen Armstrong emphasizes that all the major faiths have at their core an ethic of compassion. The ethic of compassion has been verbalized in some variation of what has been called the Golden Rule, in which we are exhorted to not treat others in ways that we would not like to be treated ourselves. The test of true spirituality is for religion to take us beyond our selfishness and greed into the presence of the love which many call divine, nirvana, or the Tao. Yet all too often, religions and religious leaders focus more on creed than deed, than on the deeper need among human beings for compassion. Armstrong clearly says that unless we now learn to implement the Golden Rule globally, so that we treat all peoples, all nations, as we would wish to be treated ourselves, we are not going to have a viable world. This is clearly the task of our time, to build a global community where people of all persuasions can live together in harmony and respect. 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life, the title of Armstrong's book, intentionally draws on the tradition of Alcoholics Anonymous with the 12 steps. Her view is that we human beings are addicted to the feelings of dislike and hate toward both things and people. She posits that the struggle of the fittest to survive may be the basis for this human tendency. Unfortunately, we all harbor elements of the reptilian brain that can be triggered to dislike or hate those who seem to threaten us, our family, or our tribe. Armstrong points out that we can easily become dependent upon little or big hates and prejudices. We need them because they have helped form our sense of self. It isn't hard to understand what she means. The other may be that annoying colleague, possibly a sibling, a parent or child, maybe a past partner. We can even project our anger to the other as an ethnic group, a religion, or a whole country. Armstrong says, when we utter these uncompassionate, dismissive, or unkind or unjust remarks about one another, we often get kind of a buzz, rather like the first drink of the evening, a sort of glow. An addiction to behavior, like being uncompassionate and downright hateful, can slowly poison us from within. We do not seem willing or able to give up such behavior any easier than we can give up drugs. It can turn one race, ethnic group, or religion against another. It can even turn siblings or other family members against another. World politics is often based on one country opposing another country to gain its resources by taking advantage of the other in some way. Political parties here in the U.S. no longer seem willing or able to work together to make compromises for the common good of our nation. How long can such a winner-take-all mentality last? We need to wean ourselves, step by step, away from this addiction by integrating habits of mind and action and thought into our daily practice. Armstrong points out that we need to start by learning and talking more about compassion. We don't see much compassion from our political leaders, business leaders, news sources, or even many of the most powerful preachers in our country. We need the people to start leading from below. Common people need to learn more about compassion, and then we need to talk openly about its importance. We can start doing that by looking at our personal worlds of family, congregation, school, neighborhood, and workplace to see what we can do. There are things we can do as an individual to increase the amount of compassion in the world. Write a letter to the editor. Support compassion in your family, community, county, state, or nation. Talk about compassion with your neighbor. Help someone in need. Be compassionate to someone you like. Be compassionate to someone you don't like. Only then can we look to the larger world to see what needs to be done to increase compassion and decrease fear, inequity, and hate. We the people can make a difference if we join with others in organized ways to increase, even if by just a little, the compassionate behavior in the world. Compassion has to be the major factor when we as communities deal with things like healthcare, public education, job training, poverty relief, the justice system, affordable housing, immigration, and yes, even illegal immigration, not to mention our national tax system. I don't think we the people, in our families, in our congregations, in our communities, in our country, and in the world, can any longer afford our addiction to the me-first attitude where others come last, if at all. Confucius introduced the Golden Rule during a difficult and violent time. It was about 500 years before the story of Jesus. He said to his followers, "Look into your own heart. Discover what gives you pain, and then refuse, under any circumstances whatsoever, to inflict that pain on anybody else. Never treat others as you would not like to be treated yourself." Pretty sound advice then, and pretty sound advice now. It was an equally difficult and violent time when a pagan elder approached Hillel, a contemporary of Jesus of Nazareth and a respected Pharisee. The man said that he would convert to Judaism if Hillel could recite the whole of Jewish teaching while standing on one leg. The story goes that Hillel stood on one leg while saying, "That which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow man." That is the Torah, and everything else is only commentary. Go and study it. And it was during those same difficult and violent times when Jesus advised his followers, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." Years later, during another difficult and violent time, the Prophet Muhammad advised his followers, "None of you have faith until you love your neighbor what you love for yourself." Why do you suppose there has been this consistency down through the ages? The answer is simple. It worked then, and it'll still work today. Our second reading is Open Our Hearts with Love by Reverend Naomi King. When the world's violence shatters the joy of a moment, we pause and reach out for the hands that remain, with open hearts, with love. When despair rises as a monster from the deep and drags down one of our own, our answer is that we open our hearts with love. When hatred and anger rage in fire and suffering, we bend to pick up the wounded, to bind ourselves, and we open our hearts with love. When fear whispers, build more gates, add more locks. The blessed are those who defend themselves. We rock those fears to sleep, and we let them rest as we open our hearts with love. People will do unspeakably cruel and horrible things. We know this is fact. We live and die this daily, all around the world, in every community and every wasteland. But we know the answer is found only with one action. And so we open our hearts with love. Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone can be healed. This is the truth we affirm. We live with courage and with a wider and wider circle of that force that bends our lives to ones of mercy, justice, and compassion. We open our hearts with love. It's the truth. Just by being born, you are loved. There is something within you and every person that can be loved. We open our hearts with love. I am now going to extinguish the chalice in front of me. If you have a candle or a chalice that you have lit, you may blow it out as well. We extinguish this chalice flame, daring to carry forward the vision of this free faith, that freedom, reason, and justice will one day prevail in this nation and across the earth. And now time for some closing words. Go forth in simplicity. Find and walk the path that leads to compassion and wisdom, that leads to happiness, peace, and ease. Welcome the stranger and open your heart to a world in need of healing. Be courageous before the forces of hate. Hold and embody a vision of the common good that serves the needs of all people. Thank you for listening. Have a good rest of your week.